everyone, my name is Tiffany and this is my channel, Who's Your Handmade. Thank you so much for stopping by today. In today's video, we are talking all about stash challenges. We're going to talk about how I did last year with my stash challenge and what I have coming up for this year. If that sounds interesting to you, stick around. If you are new to my channel, welcome. Thank you so much for stopping by. I hope that you will consider subscribing before you leave. I would love to get to know you better and welcome you into the sewing community. And thank you so much to each one of my friends who keep showing up video after video. Thank you so much for your kindness and your support. It means absolutely so much to me. So before I get into talking about my stash challenge, that's what we're here to talk about today, I do want to say something. I usually try to keep these Tuesday videos very business as usual. I try not to bring my life into them too much, but I just have to say a very heartfelt thank you to each and every one of you. If you saw my community post on Friday, you know that we have been going through a loss here in my family, and it's been a big deal to us, and I cannot thank you guys enough for your kind comments, for your thoughts of goodness and happiness, and for your prayers. It means the world to me. I've felt the kindness, you guys, surrounding me and my family. So I really cannot thank you enough. Okay, enough about life. Let's get into talking about this challenge. I am so pumped up about this challenge this year, you guys. I'm so enthused. I'm ready. I'm ready to take on this stash challenge again this year. Now in 2023, at the beginning of 2023, if you've been with me on my channel, you will know that I took on a stash challenge for the year as well. And the hubby challenged me to go 3 months without buying patterns or fabric, and then he would reward me. Well, I took on his challenge and I was incredibly successful with his challenge. So I think he was doubting a little bit, but it was so good to stop with all of the crazy buying that I was doing last year and even the year before, and focus in on what I already have. So I'm really happy with the progress that I made last year, and we're going to talk about that progress. I'm going to give you some proof. The proof is in the pudding. Have you ever heard that saying? So I'm going to show you the proof, and then I'm going to talk about where I want to take this challenge this year. I'm going to give you numbers today. I'm going to give you cold hard numbers. I did this last year. I had a launch video for my hashtag stash sewdown 2024 last year. The amazing Angela from Just Me and My Fabric created that hashtag. She was doing a stash challenge as well last year. I will link her channel down below. I know she has at least one video talking about her stash challenge, so I'll link that definitely down below. And even though I'm giving you cold hard numbers, I'm not in any way trying to bash anyone or make anyone feel bad. I'm not trying to make you feel uncomfortable. I'm not trying to do any of those things. I'm just trying to be honest. I'm being honest with you all. I'm using you as something of an accountability partner, whether you know it or not. So coming on here and talking about reality, what my real totals are, helps me so much in realizing what I do have and accepting it and trying to focus in on it. So yes, I'm going to be talking about the size of my stash. I read a post that said a lady never talks about the size of her stash. Well, this one does. And it is okay to be honest with yourself. And maybe you have a very large stash that you don't even know the totals of, and that's okay as well. I do find it very helpful to know what I have in my stash, and that's going to be one of the tips that I talk about here in a second. But let's get back to those numbers. So the beginning of last year, I talked about my total yardage. Now I do have a very large stash. I have a lot of woven fabric and knit fabric over here in this calyx unit is all of my quilting fabric, and I did not include any of that in my totals. We're just talking about garment fabric. So the total that I gave you last year at the beginning of the year was 696 yards of fabric. That is quite a large amount of fabric. My husband has joked that I have almost 7 football fields worth of yardage up here. So the yardage used in 2023 out of the 696 yards was 99 yards of fabric. I was able to sew up 99 yards of fabric from my stash. I am so happy with that number. That is a huge amount of fabric. Now, in the grand scheme of things, out of the 700, maybe it doesn't look like that much, but 99 is a lot of fabric. If you think about how many pieces of fabric, how many cuts of fabric that might have been, I'm super, super happy with that number. Now within 2023, I did have some buying months. So my strategy was to have 3 months of no buying fabric or patterns, not adding to my stash in any way, only using stash fabrics. And then I would use 1 month to pick up patterns that I wanted to pick up or pick up some fabric if I needed it. So I had a month's period every 3 months, after every 3 months, that I could go back to the store and pick up something if I needed to add to my stash. Now I was trying to be super careful about that, about what I was bringing back into my stash and what I was adding back in. So the total number for yardage added in 2023 back into the stash was 27.4 yards. It might sound like a lot, but I am really happy with only adding 27 yards. So if you take the 27.4 out of the 99, my progress was actually 71.6 yards out of my 696. So I know that I backtracked a little bit with buying some fabric and adding back into my stash, but I made so much progress. Those 71 yards has been so motivating to get back up on my stash challenge and go again for this year. So what's my starting number for today, for January 2024? My starting total yardage in my stash is 624.4. So 624.4 is what we're starting with. Hopefully I will drop below that 600 number in 2024 and use up just a lot more of my stash. Now let's talk about some challenges for myself, some goals of this stash busting challenge, what I would love to accomplish in 2024. I do want to keep with the strategy, the schedule, the routine of 3 on, 1 off. I do want to do 3 months of no buying. I've started one on January 1st and I'm doing pretty good. So no buying in January, February, and March. And then April will be my month-long buying month. But again, I want to be conscious of what I'm purchasing, what I'm bringing in. I want to start looking with an eye, a very critical eye, especially on patterns. Do I have something like that in my stash already? Could I make that with something I already have? And be more conscious that way of what I'm bringing into my sewing room. In that buying month, I also want to implement the strategy of giving myself a limit on yardage. So last year, toward the end of the year, what I started doing was using a number that had come from my most prolific sewing month. So in the month of January, I think I used 16 yards of fabric last year. So from then on, that was the number that I could not go over with bringing in during my buying month. I could buy no more than 16 yards during that month. That gave me a boundary. Boundaries are really good for me, I find. I can't just have the thought in my mind. I really do need to create that boundary around myself. Maybe numbers would help you. Maybe giving yourself a number to stick to, a target, would help you as well in your journey. And then the last goal that I really want to work on in 2024 that I did not do any of last year is I want to take a good hard look at my stash, at what is actually in my little cubbies here, and think about what I love and what I'm just not in love with anymore. And if I'm not in love with it, why is it staying in my stash? So maybe I need to cull some fabrics and some patterns even that aren't bringing me joy anymore, that aren't something that I probably would sew up and enjoy wearing. I think I've held on to them this long because I thought I will make a muslin version or a toile version of some pattern. But the reality is that I just don't have time to make muslin versions very much. And looking back over last year, I honestly did not make what I would call a muslin version of anything. What I tend to do is wearable muslins. So I take a chance on the pattern, I use my fabric, and I learn from fitting that garment. I really just don't tend to take the time to make a toile. So why am I leaving that fabric in my stash? So I need to make some tough decisions this year. I need to ask myself some tough questions, and that is one of the goals that I have for 2024. Before I end this video, I do want to give some of my most useful tips really quick for a stash challenge. If you are someone who is overwhelmed by the amount of patterns and fabric that you have in your stash, maybe this is the year that you need to give a stash challenge a try. I am not projecting it on anyone. I'm not saying that we all need to do something like this. Some of us don't have a stash at all. So doing a big challenge like this would not be beneficial, obviously, for you. But if you are feeling overwhelmed, and that's where I was at the beginning of 2023, I was so overwhelmed by the piles of fabric that were in my old sewing room, I knew that I had to do something. So let me share just a few of my favorite keys for success for this challenge. The first one is so huge. This is my number one. This is what's helped me the most in the last year to be successful with a stash challenge, is to remove temptation. Remove temptation, or remove yourself from temptation. So what does that look like? What that looked like for me was staying out of Joann's, staying out of Hobby Lobby. It also was staying away from certain emails, maybe unsubscribing to websites that flash their sales and their new fabrics or their new patterns continuously at you. And this also could mean stopping watching certain videos. Now, I am not here to dissuade you in watching anyone's video. I love our sewing community. I love every single sewing vlogger and what they bring to the sewing community. I love it. But if you are triggered by watching a giant pattern haul or a giant fabric haul, maybe you need to decide for yourself whether watching that kind of a thing is actually beneficial to your goals. We're all adults here for the most part, I would say. We all can decide what triggers us and what doesn't. Does that affect you mentally? Does that make you want to go to the Simplicity website and look up those patterns and hit add to cart? Does it make you want to run to Joann's and pick up some yardage? You know, just find out what works for you. Find out what your temptations are and try to avoid those. Tip number 2 is to take some time with your stash. Get reacquainted with what you have. Now, I love having my calyx units out here. You can see behind me that my fabric is all in the open. Every single piece of fabric, barring scraps, which I have not unpacked yet, is out in the open, and I can see it. I can feel it. I can look at colors. I can combine it for color blocking. I love having my stash out in front of me. Maybe you have space constraints and you've put your fabric into totes so that you can make use of your space. That's perfectly fine, but maybe pull out a tote and just play with your fabric. Reacquaint yourself with what beautiful fabrics you actually have, and that will spark a lot of inspiration. Same thing with patterns. You can see my binders are right there. My big 4 patterns are down here right in front of me. Pull those out, pull your drawers out, and just wade through your patterns and maybe some inspiration will spark, hey, I do remember buying that one. I was gonna make this sweater, or I was gonna make this skirt. It really helps to get back into your stash, become reacquainted with it, fall back in love with what you have already. Why do you have it in your sewing room? In all likelihood, you loved it. That's why you bought it. That's why you have it in your stash. So just fall back in love with what you have already. And then my third and last tip for success that's helped me so very much is to choose your fabric first. Choose it first. Don't go looking for the pattern first. Choose your fabric first. And why would I say that? Why would I do it that way? Because what you have is what you have. So if I were to pull out one of my bolts of fabric and I have 3 yards on the bolt, that's all I have. That is what I have to use. So now I have parameters. I have a 3-yard parameter limit for what I can make. And then I can go into my patterns and find a dress or a sweater or something like that that I can use those 3 yards for. I have done it the other way, pattern first and then looking for fabric, and it really does lead to disasters or almost disasters when you need a requirement of fabric and you just don't have it in your stash. So start with fabric first. Let the fabric lead you and then go find the pattern to match. So that is my stash challenge. That's my update from 2023 and my goals for 2024. If you will be participating in some version of a stash challenge, let me know down below. I would love to chat with you about it. I would love to be of an encouragement to you, and you can be an encouragement to me, help me with some accountability. Or if you don't have much of a stash, let me know down below as well. I would love to chat with you. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, today. I will see you in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.